All right. What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary, and I'm here with my beautiful wife. Say hi, boo.
Hi, everyone. This is Akdi, and I'm from Turkey, and today we are reviewing a Christmas movie that I wanted to watch since last year, called The Holdovers.
Yes, this is a American dramedy directed by Alexander Payne, who has made some other films such as Citizen Ruth, The Election, About Schmidt, Sideways, The Descendants, etc., etc. It stars Paul Giamatti, who is a icon now. He's dope. He's a good actor, man. And I think this is one of his best roles. And also some unknown actors as well. I don't know the other people who are in this film. Have you ever seen any of these other people before?
I feel like Da'Vine Joy Randolph. I feel like maybe he was in the new edition of Color Purple. Was she? I feel like I've seen her somewhere.
All right. Well, the other people in this film I haven't seen before. We have Dominic Sessa as Angus Tully, Da'Vine Joy Randolph as Mary Lamb, Carrie Preston as Miss Lydia Crane, and some other unknown people. But Paul Giamatti carries the show, and I'm just gonna say this: this movie is funny. It's kind of heartwarming, though at the end I have some issues with how the movie ended and sort of the message it gives. But overall, I like the cinematography, the acting, the overall story, and just the world that they build around it. You know, you could tell that they put a lot of effort into the details of making this elite boarding school where most of this story happens feel real and alive. So What did you think?
I liked this movie as well. I wanted to watch a Christmas movie, and I feel like this captures that cozy essence of Christmas. Like the scenery is there, the snow is there, and it's not just like a simple story. There's, I think, layers to it, and I overall really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So basically, we'll walk through this story. This film is about 2 hours and 13 minutes long, though it doesn't feel like it to me. I felt like it has good pacing, and it keeps you engaged with it. It's not a drag fest. But essentially, this movie takes place in this elite boarding school during winter at the end of the fall semester. And basically, all of the kids here who go to this boarding school are the kids of the 1%. So their dads, own, I don't know, mountains in Peru, and they own people in Angola. Wow. These are very rich kids, though it is not just all lily white. There are some, different groups of people who are here. Like there are black students here, Asian students and stuff like that. But it takes place in New England, Massachusetts, and essentially all the kids are ready to go home, but some of them have to stay during the fall break. And one of the professors, whose name is... The name of the professor was... Hunham. It's such a strange name.
Paul Hunham.
Yes, Paul Hunham, who is played by Paul Giamatti. He is the, old professor who teaches ancient Greek literature and history that everybody hates in the school. The students hate him. The other teachers hate him. Even the alumni hate him. He's going to be the guy who's watching the students over the fall break. So what did you think about the setup of the story, the introduction to the world, everything like that?
Yeah, like I said, the scenery, it opens up with this scene of snow, and there's also a chorus who's singing some Christmas tunes. So right from the beginning, I think it was cozy, and also how the whole aesthetic of the movie was very 70s. I think they stayed true to that even with the credits. It felt like an old movie, and I second guessed myself by saying oh wait, I thought this was a new movie. Is it though? But in terms of quality, it doesn't feel like a 70s movie. And I liked, how they sort of tried to introduce these three characters. The main three characters we will later see in the movie. We see them in their natural environment, in their everyday life. Paul Hunham is sitting at his desk, writing, scribbling something, and we see his hemorrhoid medicine. So we know he's a weirdo. And right away, the way he talks to the class and to the kids, you can sense that, okay, he's an asshole teacher. And but you can also sense that like there's some depth to him.
Yeah.
Like he had some disappointment in his life, and that led him to where he is now.
Paul Hunham reminds me so much so of my, I believe, 10th grade or 11th grade math teacher whose name was Mr. Rogers. And I'll never forget, Mr. Rogers one day came to class and said, "I'll be teaching you algebra from the book." And the book is the book I wrote. And he holds up this book and he looks just like Paul Giamatti's Paul Hunham. He wears like these sweater vests. He's got this like pouch belly. He's got this, graying goatee, balding hair. And he looks very serious to be teaching a bunch of 14, 15-year-old kids about trigonometry and algebra. He looked like he was overqualified for the job and he secretly hated us. So I'll never forget Mr. Rogers. I wanted to know if you had any teachers that remind you of Paul Hunham.
Yeah, during high school I had a teacher like that. He was a physics teacher, and he previously taught in a very prestigious school in Turkey, in Ankara. And when he came to our class, he was like, "So when I was in this university teaching, I wore the same pants for a whole semester and none of my students noticed. So I'm going to do the same thing here, but you won't know what I will do. And let's see if any of you will notice."
That sort of defeats the purpose. Shouldn't you say that at the end of the semester?
Yeah.
Why would you come in there and say, "So I'm still wearing the same pants that have my shit stains on them"? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. I constantly felt like he was trying to measure our IQs,
Yeah.
in the test, he would put an extra question. It was like a mind game question, and basically like a trick question that you have to answer that wasn't in the curriculum.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I also kind of disliked him, but he was just weird.
I actually I didn't like Mr. Rogers, but I kind of respected him. And, I'm an educator, I'm an English teacher, and I aspire to, continue teaching. And that's why I'm going to school right now for sociology, because I want to be a professor. But this movie sort of checked my ambitions, because I was like, I want to be a professor. I want to be a great professor. I want to be smart, but I don't want to be Paul Hunham. You know what I mean?
He's like a dictator in class.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, also when he talks to the principal later and stuff, he's seen as very traditionalist, the type of teacher that would smack you.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. One more thing, Paul Hunham also reminds me of this teacher I had in the same high school, 9th or 10th or 11th grade. Her name was Miss Tucker. Neville High School. If you went to Neville High School and you remember Miss Tucker, the 5'2" fascist black lady who was our English teacher, who stood there like a tree trunk, and she just commanded us to recite poetry and learn the works of Shakespeare. If you remember Miss Tucker, you know what I'm talking about. She is an authoritarian to the T, but I can't help but love her, how straight she played it. She's the best. So I don't know, man. I like those types of teachers, but not when they take it too far and just fail you on every exam.
Yeah.
If you do well, they'll give you an A, not just I just want to see you fail to prove how smart I am over you.
Yeah. I like it when it comes from a passion where they really want to just transfer their knowledge to you as a student. I like it when it comes from that. But when it's just authoritarian for no reason, I don't really like that one.
Yeah, no, that sucks. But like you said, Akdi, Paul wants to be this authority figure in the school and also a traditionalist. And so, he sits down with the principal of the school who used to be his student. That's how long Paul has been teaching there. And, Paul is being told he's going to have to watch the kids over the break, and he's actually feeling like he's being punished because he failed this kid called Kuntz. I forgot the first name of the kid, but basically Kuntz is the son of a senator, and Paul gave him a failing grade. And the principal is mad at Paul because his father donates millions of dollars to the school. His name is on the library, and Paul is like, listen, he's an idiot. He's an asshole. By the way, every time somebody says asshole in this film, you can take a shot, right?
Yeah. You say it a lot.
Every third person is an idiot, asshole, whatever, right? But yeah, this is where the conflict comes into play between Paul's adherence to academic rigor and traditional standards against the real world of academia, which is influenced by money and legacy and influence. What did you think about that scene?
Yeah, as much as I don't like that style of teaching that Hunham does, he's also like someone very strongly attached to his ethics, and I think he's very fair in that aspect. So I actually like that he was like, okay, I don't care if there's a rich, student who donates a gymnasium to the school. I'm gonna like, he's stupid as hell. So he has to get a lower grade. So then that's what I'm gonna give.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because like the principal also said, I was a teacher too, but when I became a principal, I've seen that it takes a lot to keep the school afloat.
Right.
So it's like, it's like this educational problem that we have, that principals are
institutional problem.
Yeah, like because schools and education shouldn't be a playground for these sorts of politics. And that's just like something that's a problem in a lot of societies, right. Also in Turkey.
Right. I mean, I'm about to come out my shirt because I'm going to get hot talking about this, not because I spill water on myself either. But yeah, the fact that this movie talks about like legacy admissions and rich white kids being able to fail their way upwards is a part of the reason why our society is so fucked up. We had a president, his name was George W. Bush. He was notorious for just getting C's all throughout his Yale education, like his Ivy League education. And most of our other presidents were basically dumbasses who got in there because daddy could afford it. You know what I mean? And same thing for the guy who's in office right now. Both of them. I'm talking about Biden and Trump. Dumbasses who basically failed upwards. And, I actually like that Paul was failing him. But it's the institutional problem, like you said. If daddy can put his name on the library, then he can, get his son through whatever educational institution.
Yeah, it's a big problem because, the parents do that. Maybe they're trying to, save their children or something, but it's wrong, and then it sort of conditions the children to do the same for their sons or, whatever has come next in their lives. So it's... it creates the cycle of privilege.
Yeah. But talking about privilege, let's talk about the privileged. In this case, it's the kids. And Angus Tully is one of the main characters. He's a kid who's at this private school. He's a bit older. He has very dark hair, a very sharp face. And he actually did well on Paul Hunham's final exam, while everybody else in the school or else in this class failed. And he comes into conflict with another student there called Teddy Kuntz, apparently because Teddy believes Angus stole his cigarettes, and so they start beefing. But I feel like there might have been more layers to it. There might have been deeper reasons why they would have been beefing. Kuntz is also known in the dormitory for selling dirt weed and stuff like that, and he's also pissed because he has to be one of the holdovers who stays during the vacation. Angus is expecting to go to St. Kitts and Nevis, which is a tropical island in the Caribbean, with his parents, but he actually finds out later that he can't go because his mom, who's married to this new man, is about to have a honeymoon with her new rich husband, right? And so Angus gets left over with Kuntz at this boarding school, and they're deep into conflict, right? So what did you think about Kuntz and Angus's beef?
Yeah, I just thought it was funny, no matter how rich you are, that you're still, dealing weed and, being a, dirty asshole teenager.
Yeah.
Nothing stops that sort of dynamic, I guess, no matter how much money your parents make. But, yeah, basically, it was funny. Angus Tully, I like his character, and I felt really... disappointed for him or with him when he got the news of his parents and he's not going to be able to join them during Christmas break, because it's you see everyone else joining their families and you're sort of just left in this town in this school in New England, which nothing ever happens.
Yeah, it's different because I stayed at school one winter break or whatever spring break or something like that, and it's not bad being left in New Orleans, away from your parents with no school, but being trapped in the sticks of Massachusetts, in the dead of winter, that probably sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent Christmas in the same city where I used to go to school. I didn't go back to my hometown several times, but yeah, I was with my friends, and we collectively decided to stay behind and things like that. So I never experienced something like this, and I also never went to a boarding school. Yeah,
definitely. Would you like to go to a boarding school after watching this movie?
Not in somewhere like this. I don't think I would want to go to New England and stay here because it feels very dull.
Yeah, boarding school in Jamaica, boarding school in, I don't know, Mexico, something tropical.
Yeah.
Something, but that's like unheard of. I don't think they even do that.
I mean, I guess you can go to Europe or something.
Yeah, boarding school in Cyprus. Oh, the tragedy. But yeah, basically Kuntz and Angus have beef. Also because, Angus kind of messed it up for the class when he spoke up and said, "Hey, Mr. Paul Hunnam, can we not, have a exam or read a chapter right now because everybody else is going on break, and so all the students who failed the test aren't going to get a chance to now retake the exam." So they have beef because of that. And when Angus gets left over, he's left there with Kuntz, some other older kid who's there, this little Mormon kid, and this young Korean kid. So it's like these 5 holdovers are left to hang out with Paul Hunnam at this boarding school. And what did you think about, those characters?
I mean, I like that they included like the smaller kids as well, because you feel like a lot of sympathy for them because they're so, young, and you feel like, oh, like little kids, they should be with their parents. And I feel like you also know what the older ones went through, maybe a little bit, like when they were smaller. So it's like a, flashback sort of dynamic that they have, I feel like. Yeah. And it was like different to have those different students. I don't know.
Yeah, that Mormon kid was so annoying though. I just really something about Mormons, like especially like the ones directly from Utah, they have this very particular like, I don't know, naivete, sort of like innocence about them. Like even if they're adults, it's so annoying. It makes you just want to shake them and like slap them and like, I don't know.
I don't think it was annoying, but I like the difference between like why they couldn't go home, because they have that conversation outside. And like the older kid with long hairs, he's very rich, right? And his parents are like taking a helicopter to go skiing somewhere. And he's not going because his dad wants him to cut his hair, but he won't. So it's like there's this, fight between him and his dad. Yeah. And then like you have this small Korean kid, and he's like, my family is in Korea and I can't go there because I can't travel alone at a young age. Yeah. So it's like you have these two differences, and I couldn't help myself but think like, bro, like you're dumb. Just agree with your dad and go be with your family while this little Korean kid is like suffering because he don't have the means to travel back.
I mean, this movie really tests my patience on who I can feel sorry for. Because like you're saying, you feel sorry for this kid and that kid. I don't feel sorry for generally any of them because these are the kids of the 1%. Like their lives are straight. Paul Hunnam says this later in the film. You were born lucky. We're looking at people generally who are born lucky when we look at all of these kids. So it's hard for me to like feel a little bit of any sort of empathy for them. But that's what I feel like this movie is trying to do. The movie is trying to like shake the watcher and say, feel sorry for them. Feel sorry for the rich white elite. Why won't you cry for the millionaires? And it's like, I just can't do it. You know what I mean?
I mean, Hunnam's character makes it clear that they are very privileged and they act like assholes. So I don't really think that's what the movie is trying to do. But at the same time, like, yeah, they're privileged. But everyone has their different battles in life, and also they are just kids that were born into a privileged family. Like it's not their, it's not something that they can control. They're just trying to be kids and live their life. Right.
I feel like the movie could have done better by layering them, by having them have some sort of, real deep issues. Maybe one kid is like suicidal, cutting himself. Maybe one kid is being abused by a parent or a family member or something like that. Maybe one kid really isn't as rich as he says he is, and he's just trying to fake the funk to pretend like he's a part of the group. I don't know, but overall, like the beef that they have between each other, like when Paul confronts Kuntz, he just basically says, your parents left you here because you're an asshole, bro. Like, yeah, everybody knows you're a jerk, you're a dick. You know what I mean? Like, like that's it? That's it for me?
I mean, I understand that the things might seem small, but also like, for example, you can theorize about what Kuntz's deal is, right? Why doesn't his parents want him at the house they told him that they were renovating his room. That does sound like a stupid idea.
Especially in winter.
And Christmas.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, then you think, oh, maybe this guy isn't loved by his parents or something. Maybe there's something going on in his house. Like, we're never explained.
Right.
But, yeah, there is. And also there is something with Tully as well.
I mean, what's revealed about Tully is Tully is the most layered of the kids here because he's the one on screen the most, and we'll talk about that. But speaking of feeling sorry for somebody, we should probably talk about the character Mary Lamb, who is played by Da'Vine Joy Randolph. And so she's this large, black woman who works there at the school, and she had her son go to the school. And we presume, even though it's not explained in the movie, that her son was able to attend this very elite private school because she worked there. And so she sent him there for free. He graduated, but she still didn't have enough money to send him to college. This movie takes place in the year 1970, and what was raging at that time? Vietnam. We were sending our, child soldiers across the world to go die to fight, the Vietnamese people from having their own country. So he didn't get the college deferment like a lot of the kids here will get, obviously, and many other kids in real life got. By the way, Donald Trump skipped over going to Vietnam because he lied and said he had bone spurs in his feet, right? A straight up coward, right? But he loves the country. Anyway, so yeah, her son ends up going to Vietnam and dies. And, at the beginning of the film, there's like this church service where they're memorializing her son and telling Mary that they'll do, anything to help her or get her back on her feet and stuff like that. But throughout the film, her son's memory sort of haunts her and causes her to, go through a lot of emotional turmoil. What did you think about, Mary's character?
I think, first of all, I think she did a very great job just conducting the emotions that she was feeling, because her situation was very bitter. Like losing a son, losing a child is very, very harsh. And that's something like both of us would not understand at this point. I think her situation was very tricky because she works at the school where her son used to study. So I feel like she has lots of memories of him in the school. But at the same time, she has to like look at the faces of these, privileged kids there who didn't have to go to, to the military, to the war, and they have like their future ahead of them, and her son didn't have the same opportunity because of like class differences, and also essentially in a systematic level like race differences as well. So I think like she was just like stuck in those two emotions, and I feel like her like just acting and everything that she says conveyed that really good.
Number one, I gotta say, the woman who plays Mary Lamb did an excellent job nailing that New England accent. Like, she speaks that New England accent perfectly. She's like, I'm watching the TV. I can't even do it. But she talks like Lois Griffin from Family Guy. Like, I can't even do it. But that New England, Massachusetts accent is so rare, and she nails it perfectly. I don't know if she's from there or if she got a speech coach, but she does it well. And her acting generally is good, especially in the scenes that she has next to Paul Giamatti, who, number one, is carrying this film on his back, first and foremost, from the character, from how he's written, and just how he acts. But anyway, the number one problem I have with this film is that the film is about making people feel sorry and empathize with others, but they sort of equate her son's death, which was needless, senseless, and is violent at a systematic level, with the pain that these young, rich white boys are going through. That's sort of like where I was like feeling kind of weird about watching this film, because what she's going through is real. Her son died at the hands of a system that says, if you don't have the money, you got to fight and possibly die for this country, right? Just to get your keep. Because he said he wanted to go to the army to get the GI Bill so he could go to college for free. Meanwhile, these other white boys and other rich kids are basically have their whole lives set out for them because daddy just has enough money to buy their way out of trouble. You know what I mean? So that's one weird thing that made me feel awkward about watching this movie, even though I looked past it to just dive into the world and, be taken by the comedy and the story as it progressed. But what do you think?
There is somewhat of an like equation of those different pains. But that's also like very realistic, because as humans we dwell on our own pain, and we tend to like we sympathize with one another. If someone tells you they lost their child, you feel bad, you try to comfort them, etc. But at the end of the day, you're still consumed by your own struggles and your own pain. And even when you stand up for something, even when you're advocating for something, you know, in your daily life, you still don't consider those things. So I think there's a reality to it. You know, especially if we're talking about kids, they're, you know, more egocentric than adults.
But I'm talking about for the, you know, meta narrative that this movie is trying to tell about our society, like whose problems are not what we, you know, acknowledge, but whose are weighted more. You know what I mean? And I think what this film is trying to do is put, you know, the problems of the elite on the same scale as basically the rest of us. And I find that a bit problematic. Right? Like, it's hard for me to feel bad that the little Mormon kid had his mitt thrown into the river, right? It's hard for me to feel bad that Kuntz's parents don't want to spend time with him. Hard for me to even feel bad for Angus Tully that his mama want to get dicked down in St. Kitts and Nevis without her son in the next room. You know, it's hard for me to, you know, feel those things.
I don't think as you're watching the movie, you feel the same level of remorse for each situation. Of course, like, you feel less sad when you see the, you know, the kid's glow when it got thrown away, or when he gets bullied, and you feel more sad when you see Mary just looking into the distance, smoking and drinking, you know, because you try to understand her pain. So I don't think they're like shown in the equal level, but when it comes to like coping with it or sharing with it, then that's how like it's sort of made equal a little bit. But also like Paul Hunham, he like always points out that, you know, this woman is going through the most out of all of us. Yeah. So I feel like he does a good job of like balancing those, you know, things, those pains.
So we'll build on that more because, like you said, Paul Hunham does point out that, you know, Mary is going through the most. So basically, you know, the holdovers are left there. The 5 kids are left there with Paul and only Mary to like cook their foods and stuff like that. And Paul is making these guys study while they're on break, do homework while they're on break, wake up early and go running in the snow while they're on break. And they all have to like stay together the entire time. So he's like eating dinner with them and stuff like that. And basically one day, you know, Kuntz gets in trouble because he got into a fight with Angus Tully and the Mormon kid snitches on him. And Kuntz says that, you know, Mary's food is disgusting when he's not allowed to eat dinner with them. And Paul blows up on them and blows up on Kuntz and says that woman is going through the most. Like, she's been through hell that you could never imagine and stuff like that. And so, yeah, he always tries to like stand up for Mary and like nail it home in these kids' heads that, number one, you're going to work while you're here at school. It's not your playground. And 2, have some sympathy for people that, you know, don't have as much as you.
Yeah, also have some respect for like the working class as well, because I believe like Kuntz says something like, you know, it's sad that she lost her son, but she gets paid to do this job. Like, I hate that type of thinking. Yeah. Like, you know, obviously, yeah, maybe you can make that argument when a worker is disrespectful to you or something, but initially Mary doesn't do anything wrong. Yeah. Basically, she just exists. And Kuntz is like bothered by her presence, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, that's the type of, you know, rich kid I hate. Yeah. Also, because then you also know this is what his parents think as well. Like, this is, his parents said this at a restaurant for a waiter, and then he copied and pasted it.
Yeah, he definitely picked that up from Dad. Like, the help here is horrible. Something like that. Yeah, but basically, the holdovers sort of break up, which I did not expect this to happen in the film. I thought the entire film was going to be these 5 kids having to get along with Paul and come to some realization, like a coming-of-age film. But nope, Daddy comes in and saves the day. So one of the rich kids, the kid with the long hair, he's studying with the 4 other holdovers one day, and they hear a helicopter outside. And then he says, I knew that son of a bitch would cave. So they run to the window and they look outside. And one of the rich kids' dads is in the helicopter landing in the quad and picks up the kids and says, we're going to go skiing. And so they call all of their parents and all of them are allowed to go except Angus Tully. So Kuntz goes, the Korean kid goes, the Mormon kid goes, long-haired kid goes, and it's just Angus, Paul Hunham, and Mary Lamb left at the school for the winter break. What did you think of that scene?
First of all, I know he's a rich kid, but how cool is it for you to invite all of your friends for skiing in God knows where?
Yes, I know, right?
So, like, that was cool of him to do, but obviously he has the means to it, so it's not, you know, he doesn't have to put a lot of effort in it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, once again, like, I felt bad for Tully because, you know, everyone else is going and they're going to experience probably something very nice.
Yeah.
And he's left out of it, stuck with, like, the... you know, annoying teacher and a grieving mom.
Did you expect that that's where the movie was going to go? Because I was expecting, like, it just to be those 5 characters. And then actually when those other ones left, I was like, oh, this movie is going to fall apart soon because these 3 characters can't tell a compelling story.
I did expect it. Because when I looked at the posters of the movie, it was 3 of them sitting on a table. So I knew it was going to be about the 3 of them.
Okay, I didn't know that. 'Cause I went into this movie blind, not knowing what was going to happen. And I was looking forward to Kuntz and Tully either, like, scrapping to the death or, like, ending up like Brokeback Mountain, like behind the, like, I don't know, the school cafeteria.
Ew, gross. No, Paul Hunham is definitely asexual or something.
No, I mean Kuntz. I'm talking about Kuntz and Tully.
Oh, Kuntz and Tully.
Yeah, Kuntz and Tully just end up, like, making out, like, in the bathroom, like, bro.
I mean, Tully does wear Speedos.
I know, so. Right? But yeah, basically, you know, Angus is, like, hella pissed off that he's trapped there. And now that sort of, like, the other kids are gone, like, Paul Hunham's power is not as influential over Tully. Because Tully feels like, I'm here alone, I don't deserve to be here alone, and why am I listening to this guy? So there's this scene when, you know, Angus is, like, running from Tully all over the school. Tully is running from Hunham all over the school, and you know, Tully goes to the school gym, which is being, like, renovated, and he, like, does a backflip and he, like, dislocates his arm, and Hunham has to take this kid who broke the rules to this hospital now to have his arm relocated, and Hunham is scared that he's gonna get fired and all this sort of stuff. And there's this scene where they have to, like, relocate you know, Tully's arm back into place. And they're able to make this happen without anybody knowing because they lie together. Tully says that, you know, Hunham is his father, and Hunham just sort of agrees with it. You know, please don't include the insurance because if you do that, I won't have visitation rights to see my son. His mom is a bitch or something like that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, what did you think of those scenes?
Like, the chasing around the school scene was very funny because you can see, like, Tully is sarcastic and smart, just like Paul Hunham. Mm-hmm. So I feel like you know, they're somewhat similar characters or personalities, and I feel like also later in the movie, that's why they get so close. Mm-hmm. But basically, everything, like, Hunham was saying to them before, like, when they were doing workouts, he said, you know, without workout, body decays or something. And then, like, when Hunham is running after Tully in the school, Tully says the same thing to him. Yeah. And, like, Hunham is out of breath. Mm-hmm. And
by the way, Hunham, like, smokes like a chimney, and he, like, just... It looks like he has never done a sit-up in his life.
Yeah.
Like, he drinks all the time. Like, the kids can smell the whiskey on his breath, like, through the hallways. Like, totally unhealthy dude.
Yeah, totally unhealthy. And, yeah, basically, like, Hunham is like, I have to, like, look after you. You are my responsibility. Don't you go into that gym. Mm-hmm. And then Tully goes in, dislocates his shoulder. And then he says to him, like, you have to take care of me. Like, why didn't you take care of me? And it's just, like, funny that, you know, sort of convo that happens there. Mm-hmm. And then basically when they go to the hospital, Hunham is, you know, just thinking about himself. Mm-hmm. And how is he going to get out of the situation? And maybe like you, mm-hmm. he's not able to sort of sympathize with the rich kids, right? and Tully sort of comes in and saves the day. He acts like Hunham is his dad, and he says like, I can't see my dad because my mom would like sue him again or something like that.
The thing about Tully is that I know his character is supposed to be a mischievous kid, but it sort of like falls apart for me because Tully says, I've been kicked out of multiple schools and I'm a bit older than the other kids here because I've missed a few grades and missed a few semesters and stuff like that. So while he's like, doing all this mischievous stuff, and then later in the film, like getting into fights in bars that, Hunham has to save his ass from, it's like, you should be a bit more wiser, street smart, mature than how you're acting. And I know we're supposed to like sympathize with him and say, oh, he's just a kid, but he's really like, I don't know, 18, 19. And plus the actor who plays him looks a bit older too. And I'm like, it's hard for me to wrap in my mind, okay, go easy on him. He's a petulant child. Not really, in my mind. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I don't think like his senselessness comes from him being a child or a teenager. I think it comes from like his family dynamics. And because of that, he sort of like becomes reckless and, sort of rebelling against his mom, possibly. And we will like learn more about his past with his dad and stuff like that. So yeah, like that's like his defense mechanism, and it's a toxic one. Right. So I think that's where it comes from, not necessarily because he doesn't know what is right or wrong.
I guess so, and I trust you because you're a psychologist. Who knows? I'll assume your psychoanalysis of Tully is that, he's reclusive and aloof and defensive because he has insecurities he's dealing with, because he's been in trouble so much, and maybe, he feels abandoned by his family.
It's abandonment, it's rebellion against his mom, possibly. It's also like anger about what happened to his dad. It's a lot of things. Yeah. It's multiple things just like, combined.
Yeah. For me, all I gotta say is boo-hoo. Like, I like this movie. I really do like this movie, but it's for the small stuff, like the scenes when Paul Giamatti is like tries to throw a football and he like throws it like a complete pansy. Like just those small things Paul Giamatti does. He is carrying this movie on his back. So is Da'Vine Joy, who plays Mary Lamb. She does well. Their interactions. Honestly, this film could have been just them left at the school having like a rom drum, and eventually they fall in love and clap cheeks in the kitchen. I would have loved to see that more than like the story of Tully's self-discovery. Like honestly, the Giamatti and Da'Vine Joy chemistry in this thing is palpable. It's sweaty. It's sexy.
Wow. I mean, I definitely enjoyed their dynamic too, I guess. But, let's also include the younger generation as well. Huh?
Listen, Dominic, whatever his name, Dominic Sessa, does a good job acting. So do all the other young people as well. But I'm just talking about how the character is written, right? And, it made me think about, unfortunately, a Serbian film. And remember the main character there? We sympathize with him, and there was never a time where you felt like, oh, he did something stupid. You know what I mean? With Tully, a lot of the times I feel like you're doing something stupid, like hand in my face,
Yeah, but he's doing it consciously, I think. Or sometimes unconsciously because of like his past trauma.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have to say, like, until in the far later in the movie, I wasn't like sympathizing overly with Tully. Like, yeah, I understood what he was going through. I understood like, oh, he's sad because he can't be with his family. But I wasn't like, oh, like poor Tully. Like I feel so sad for him. I want to cry. It was never like that. And up until like a certain point, and even at that point, I wasn't feeling it as same for him as I did, like, for example, with Mary.
Right. It's a bit about empathy. Like, you feel empathy, but it's not, oh, boo-hoo, crying empathy for this person, right? All right, but anyway, so basically, Christmas Day comes, and the three holdovers, Paul Hunham, Tully, and Mary Lamb, they get invited to a Christmas party from one of the women who works at the school. I believe her name is
Miss Lydia Crane.
Miss Lydia Crane. Yes, she's sort of like the school assistant, and she's played by Carrie Preston, by the way. She does a good job. And so they all go over to the house, and they're greeted there, and Angus Tully goes downstairs with Lydia Crane's niece, whose name is Elise the niece, something like that, right? And they're flirty and stuff like that. Elise like kisses him, and they have like this teenage, sexual tension, romance going on downstairs.
Yeah, while finger painting.
Yeah, while finger painting. Upstairs, Mary Lamb is like getting drunk as hell, playing like Christmas records, and the school janitor guy, who's another black character in this film, Danny. Yeah, he shows up and he like gives a gift to Mary Lamb, and he's trying to flirt. And, he is really just trying to get in them draws, which broke my heart because I was really shipping Paul and Mary. Like, I was really shipping them so much.
Yeah.
And Paul, meanwhile, he gets the impression after Angus tells him that, hey, maybe Miss Lydia Crane likes you. She's always smiling and glowing when she's around you. Total smoke show. You should smash that, bro. And so, like, Paul Hunter was like, nah, really? I guess I can. So he, like, shows up to the party after, like, spraying his stinking body with, like, I don't know, the stuff that you would spray in a bathroom after you take a massive dookie.
Glade.
Yeah, he sprays his body with Glade, like, because Axe body spray wasn't invented then. But then he gets his heart broken at the party when Miss Lydia Crane kisses like the first, 6'4" white man that walks through the door. And so, later on that night, Mary sort of breaks down crying in the bathroom, reminiscing about her son. And then all of the people from the school, Paul, Angus, and the janitor, Danny, they, comfort her and, try to take her home. And Angus is kind of upset, like, yo, I was about to get some draws, bro. I was about to smash Elise the niece. And Paul Hunham has to say, you have to chill, this you were abandoned on Christmas. We don't want to abandon Mary Lamb. But then Mary Lamb says, don't tell a boy who got abandoned on Christmas that nobody loves him and wants him. And that's the end of the scene. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, and just for the context, before this, with some of the dialogues, we learned that first with Mary, also she lost her husband as well at 25, and it was like a work accident. I think he was probably like a construction worker, right? And he got hit in the head with an object. And like his son wasn't even 20 when he died at the war. And also about Hunham, we learned that like everybody says he smells, right? Mm-hmm. And then after like they're done with the hospital, they go get burgers. And after that, like Tully says, by the way, dude, like you smell. Mm-hmm. You smell like fish and it's really bad. So I'm going to crack open the window. And Hunham says that he has basically like this disease where his body can't break down a certain chemical and that causes him to like smell very bad. And
I wonder if that happens to all old people, because that running joke, old people have a smell. You think that's something that happens as we get older?
Maybe. Like, I think his situation was, like, more permanent, but I think...
So he always felt like that? Like, as a baby, he came out that way?
I feel like it. But maybe that ability decreases as we get older. Mm-hmm. Like everything else in our body, right? Mm. So maybe that's why older people smell worse. Mm. But, yeah, basically, like, we get those contexts. And also, like, when they're getting burgers... Paul and Tully, right? Miss Lydia is their waitress. And Tully senses like some sort of chemistry, but we sort of understand that Paul never really had a wife, or, he says that he got close one time, but he's not really interested in those sorts of things. And I just wanted to tell those because I feel like it's interesting and important for the context. But I like the fact that they went out to the party. I kind of hated Miss Lydia because even though she's very nice, right? Why is she like coming on to Hunham knowing that she has a nice tall man waiting for her?
I didn't think she was coming on. I just think she was just being nice. Like there's some guys that say, oh man, she smiled at me. She must like me. And there's a reason, and I've heard women say, I don't smile at dudes or be nice in general because then guys think that you're trying to flirt.
Yeah, I get that, but like when they were talking, she like holds his hand and stuff like that. Or she's like overly interested in him. I don't know. Maybe she feels bad for him and maybe that's why she does it. But I was like a little bit annoyed by her situation. And yeah, what Tully, like, it was, yeah, very like teenager hormonal shit that was happening.
I didn't like that stuff because it, like, throughout this movie they make it seem like Tully is this heartthrob. Is Tully cute?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was a teenager, yeah, maybe.
Maybe,
yeah.
I guess. I didn't think so. And like everywhere he goes, like girls just like fall over him, like kissing him after knowing him for like 5 minutes, want to flirt at the bowling
like
alley.
2 times.
Yeah, but still, it just didn't seem natural. Like Elise the niece was just like needlessly like biting her lip as soon as she saw Tully. Like, what was that about? Like, that's just.
I mean, maybe it's because he's rich or something.
Maybe they could smell the money on him.
I mean, maybe Elise knew, him around town or something. But
Yeah.
also, like, when you're at that age and he's a bit older than the other, like, guys at the school. So, yeah, he's trying to, like, get on. At class, he's looking at pornography magazines and stuff like that. So, he's coming on to everyone. And everyone sort of approaches him as well.
I guess so.
And, yeah. And that's, like, one of maybe the main differences between Tully and Hunham also. Because Hunham is not a player at all.
Right.
But, yeah. I like the fact that at the end of the scene, sort of all of the guys got together to help Mary. Like, Tully was the one who went to Hunham and said, like, we have a situation, you have to come. And, yeah, and there also Tully says, like, my dad is dead.
Yeah.
And, it's, I think constantly throughout this movie, we're reminded that we don't know anyone else's battles until we know.
Yeah, what's good about this film is that there's dialogue enough that layers the characters and you know more about them. And you can also assume some more things about them. Like you said, Hunham, never was married and he was not a player. But then later on in the film, he says something like, boy, back in the day, I was beating these hoes out the frame, knocking it out the box. And so maybe it's true. I don't know. Because later on in the story, he says another part of his life that you wouldn't expect that totally happened. So you get, like, there's so many layers to this thing that I feel like makes this movie good despite its massive philosophical, moral fault in it that still allows it to carry itself.
Yeah.
This movie is like the Bible. Like, we know it's not true and it has a major flaw in it, you know what I mean? But it's still pretty interesting. Like, whoa, talking snakes, niggas getting eaten by whales, angels falling from the sky, swords made of fire. Damn, this shit lit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like how the story unfolds in this movie.
Yeah.
For each character.
Yeah. I mean, what I think also with the Elise the niece thing, I just have to throw this out there. I think she might have been like a Russian catfish because like all of these kids at this school are like prime kidnapping bait. You steal one of these kids, boy, and call up their parents, you're set for life. We'll take off one thumb for every minute that you don't transfer over $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I would kidnap Kuntz in a heartbeat, bro. Seriously.
I would kidnap him too.
Yes, he is the prime suspect. Just to slap him around a bit.
Yeah, and also like he's an asshole, so you get what he deserved.
I know, right? For Angus Tully, you kidnap him, maybe you get $100,000. Kuntz, you get at least 6 figures, at least.
Yeah. I mean, and for the guy with the long hair, you get 6 figures plus a helicopter.
He might be the prime target. Oh, but the Korean kid, he might be like the son of like Kim Jong-un or something.
Wow.
So we could get.
I'm not gonna kidnap a Korean kid.
That's scary. Yeah, don't kidnap the Korean kid at the elite school.
I'm not about to start a war.
Listen, we've only come for the whites. The Asians are safe. I'm sorry. Anyway, basically, Angus and Mary, they have Christmas together at the school. Paul Hunham gets like this mediocre Christmas tree and gifts both of them Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Marcus Aurelius was like a Roman emperor back in the day. He was like the philosopher king, and now he's loved by every like edgelord online who is like, Stoicism is the way, bro. And so, both of them are kind of not happy with the presents that Paul Hunham gives them, and so Angus like begs Paul, take me to Boston, and so Paul is like, well, I guess I can because they did give me money for being here with you to go on a field trip for academic purposes. So they go to the greatest American city, Boston, Massachusetts, and it's wintertime. They're touring the city. Mary gets to go to her sister's house. Her sister is pregnant, and meanwhile, Paul and Tully are like going to like open book markets where they're approached by prostitutes, and they're walking through the main squares and the cobbled streets and all that sort of stuff. What did you think about those moments?
I feel like Paul was beginning to explore his more mischievous side, inspired by Tully, which I liked, because he's always so strict. And and at the beginning of the movie, Mary basically says like, I'm not ready to go see my sister, like I'm not ready for that sort of talk or family environment. But she also ends up changing and opening up a bit more about her grief. And she ends up like seeing her sister, and there's like this scene where Mary goes up into, I guess, like the new baby's room, right, or the guest bedroom, and there's this drawer of like baby clothes, and she also has this box of, we're guessing, a baby clothes of Curtis, her son that died. So she like slowly picks up the little shoes and little sweater and things like that. I'm not gonna lie, at that scene, I know I didn't make it obvious, but I shed like 2 little tears. Because, even though I'm not a mom, for example, I have like a baby brother. And every time, like, even if I just only see his like baby pictures, I get emotional. Because it's so different. Like, as a mom, you basically create someone out of nowhere. And then you raise them, you feed them. They're like this little baby. And I think there's just so much love and connection in those years. And at the end of it all, he raised him for possibly like 18, 19 years. She put all of his love and effort for this kid. And, he ended up going to a war and dying and all is lost. So in that scene, like, just captured that grief and love all together so very well. And and also after that, like, her sister came in, they hugged, they cried together. It was just very emotional.
That was a touching scene. It's so subtle, like what this movie does for those moments of sentimentality, like those scenes, like what you just said, with the shoes, with Mary going to the house, up the stairs, them hugging and sitting on the bed and reminiscing, her sister together. Those moments are so poignant and simple, and this movie does them excellently well, by not doing much. So shout out to Alexander Payne for directing it and bringing that sort of emotional fabric to this film that really makes it work, right?
Yeah.
So, another thing that happens, while Paul and Tully are like walking through Massachusetts, they're like going to the museums and stuff. And there's one of my favorite scenes where, Tully is like, I don't want to go to a museum of ancient history. And then Hunham says, look there at that pot. And so Tully looks at that pot and sees that it's 2 Greeks fucking, like, in this old ceramic jar or whatever. And so Hunham does like this mini epic speech. It's not very long, but he says, we think that we're so different than people of the past, but if you want to understand who we are now, we have to look in the past. And Tully says, wow, if you said that in class and throw in a bit of pornography, I'd be more interested. I was like, that's kind of true. Like, but I really liked how Hunham gets to like sort of like validate his existence as a teacher of something that generally means nothing, like learning ancient Greek, books and plays and stuff like that. Sure, it's important to Western literature, but you're not going to use that to pay your bills. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he still made it feel very real, and I like that as somebody who values education and wants to be a teacher and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy that too, because it's like one of those very I don't know, like, it's not life-changing, but it's one of those, like, education periods where, I don't know, one of your professors says something. It could be a sentence or a little speech where you're like, wow, like I never thought of that before, or wow, like, you know, you just hear them word it in a certain way that's what you thought sort of comes true. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of like that.
Yeah.
You know, the way he talked about civilizations and our past, and it's sort of like, it wasn't only history anymore, it was understanding, like right. you said, your current situation. Right. And I think it also highlighted, like, I think it was somewhat of a criticism of our society as well, mm-hmm. like what he said. So
right, right. Like, we think we're so different and we don't need to read the past and the books and what came before us, right? But it does matter because, you know, the Greeks were as freaky as we are.
Yeah.
They had whole pots where people were getting gangbanged and putting the H, you know what I mean? All sorts of freaky stuff. So, yeah, once again, I have to say, Giamatti is carrying this movie. This movie, it just hit me. This is like Brendan Fraser to The Whale is what Giamatti is to this film. You know what I mean? Like Brendan Fraser's acting, his character, the whole development of The Whale, you know, saved his career or resurrected it. This is what The Holdovers is doing for Giamatti. Absolutely fabulous, and he kills it every scene. Mm. So just putting that there. But we find out something interesting about Hunham. So, you know, while Angus Tully is like, you know, ice skating at the park, sliding all over the ice like a Dumbo, you know, they leave the ice rink, and Hunham is ran into by one of his old classmates from Harvard, and this guy just became a professor at Harvard with tenure. And so the Harvard professor asks Hunham, so what are you up to, old classmate friend? And Hunham says, yeah, you know, I'm just doing like research and fellowships with, you know, universities in Switzerland. Yeah, I'm in Switzerland. And sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm there. You know, it's nothing to talk about. And so I'm also working on a book. It's about magic in the stars or something like that, right?
Yeah,
like
stars and magic of ancient civilization, something
like that, right? So it's very cringe. And so the guy says, well, that sounds great, and like walks away. And so, you know, Tully asks, what was that about? And then we get this big reveal. Back in the day, Hunham was writing like his thesis paper, but his roommate, who was another rich kid, stole his paper and then lied and said that Hunham copied from him and plagiarized from his work, right? And so that got Hunham in trouble. And so then he punched the rich kid in the face and ended up getting kicked out of Harvard, and he didn't even graduate college. But the reason he's a professor at Barton is because he was friends with, you know, one of the people that worked there, and ended up getting a job and just stayed there and grinded it out, and, you know, was there for many, many, many years. So that was interesting. That was a very interesting story. What did you think about that part?
Yeah, I think it was like his professor at Barton, and he said something like he saw so much potential in me that he didn't care that I didn't graduate. So he like got me in, and I started teaching and stuff like that. Yeah, it was interesting because Paul Hunham is so like ethical, right? Constantly, and he values education so much, and especially like traditional education. So to see that he has like a professional flaw, I guess, like that.
A big one. He didn't graduate
yeah, like this.
College. Yeah, you're a professor and you didn't graduate college.
Yeah, and sort of like, you know, sharing this with Tully, with one of his students who used to hate him. It was, you know, vulnerable, I think. And he also, like, they sort of develop, you know, this thing where, you know, everything is kept secret during this trip because mm-hmm. they keep on, like, discovering each other's secrets, or they keep on doing something like they shouldn't be doing during the, you know, school field trip. So everything is undue. So something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So in secret. So I like that they just constantly build on these shared secrets, and it just makes Tully and Hunham's relationship stronger.
Right. When I found out that Hunham got kicked out of school basically because a rich person fucked him over, it made me, you know, upon reflection, like this movie's message even less and its ending even more, right? So I Yeah, that part about Hunham shows me, like, his character is really, really layered. Back in the day, he might have been a badass with a 12-inch cock who was slaying everything and writing, the firest papers you've ever heard. And then on top of that, he was good with them fists, but that all got him in trouble. And so then because of that mistake, he like toned it down, in his life. So I thought that was really cool. But moving on in the story, basically, Hunham and Tully are like still running around Boston. They go to the movies one day and Tully says, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And he tries to escape and go into a taxi. And then Hunham catches him when he goes into the taxi. And Tully says, I'm off to see my dad. And Hunham is like, I thought your dad was dead. And then they end up going to like this insane asylum, the sanitarium. And then we find out that Tully's dad isn't really dead. He's been institutionalized. And, Tully tries to talk to him about his life. He's doing well in school. He's in the chess club. And all his father has to say is, I eat my boogers and I throw my poo at the wall.
No. Basically, his dad has paranoid schizophrenia. And he says, I think they're putting something in my food.
Yeah. And so, Tully is like kind of sad that his dad is like left like that. And Hunham is like, what can I do? What can I say? I tried to help. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think also like later on, basically after they, exit the institution, we hear Tully's story. Basically, like his dad wasn't always like this, and he started slipping, and then he started getting like physically abusive towards his mom, and his mom ended up, divorcing him, and now getting a new husband, etc. Like trying to have a new life for herself, and things like that. I think this is when I, felt bad for Tully, because obviously his dad was an important part of his life, like every kid most of the time, especially like, when you're rich and if your parents are, in a good marriage, I guess. And to go through that familial trauma, your dad becoming a schizophrenic patient, it was very sad, like the way he sort of updated his dad about his life, and all his dad had to say was, was something paranoid, and it's like he doesn't care, or he doesn't know, or he doesn't acknowledge what is happening at all. It is basically like your dad being dead, but yeah, it was very helpless.
Yeah, I mean, when I found that part out about Tully, also, we find out Tully's on antidepressants, and Paul Hunham is on antidepressants, and his dad is in an institution. I was like, yeah, that's sad, but, you also did say your dad started beating on your mom, and that he became violent towards you and stuff like that. And I know how hard it is, to not love your parents, even when they're abusive, but if your mom said don't go, why are you going there? You know what I mean? And I know you want to be with somebody on Christmas, but you have Paul Giamatti running around with you in Boston. You know what I mean? Like, what more can a young man ask for?
No. I think it's like too basic to say, oh, why did you go there? Because your mom said you shouldn't. Because, you're a kid and your mom is annoying the fuck out of you by like banging up and going to her honeymoon during Christmas break, leaving you alone. So of course you're going to do something to rebel against her. Plus you would also get to see your dad and maybe like one last shot of, him not being sick. So yeah, like I understand why he went. I might have went too.
Yeah, I just think, the danger in this film is like we find reasons to make excuses for some bad behavior for these kids, and which is natural for us to do as people, right? Because generally people don't like seeing other people punished for generally harmless things, especially when they're trying to, fill some emotional need. But I think the issue is that, in our society, there isn't that sort of double standard that exists where everybody gets to, benefit from the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean? There is this double standard where, these rich kids get to, make mistakes, fail upwards, break the rules, bend the rules, and everything gets to be okay for them. But other people have to suffer. And I think that sort of, gets closer to the ending of this film. So basically New Year's comes, they have a small party, get together with the last holdovers, Hunham, Tully, Mary Lamb, and Danny, the janitor guy. A few days later, everybody's coming back to school. So all the other kids are back in class and stuff like that. And, Hunham gets a call into the office, and it's Tully's parents. And Tully's parents are like, why did you take him to Boston? He snuck in this snow globe to his father, and his father almost killed one of the workers there at the sanitarium with it. And did he make you do this? If he did, it's okay, but just let us know so that we can deal with him. And Hunham takes a deep swallow and says, I did it. It was my idea. In fact, I encouraged him to do it. And honestly, I don't give a shit. He says, I don't give a shit about what y'all think. And, the principal says, Hunham, you did this to yourself. And the last words Hunham says to his boss, which was his former student, was that I knew you since you were a kid. And even now I can confidently say that you are penis cancer in the human form, and walks away. Right? Tully is, really scared. He's going to get sent to a military academy, but apparently that doesn't happen. Hunham gets fired from his job. Tully says, hey, you want to go grab a beer before you, leave? And Hunham says, no, I'm going to go, put together my life. Mary gives, Hunham this book with blank pages so he can finally write his book about Carthage he's been talking about all his life. And the last thing Hunham does when he leaves the school is take a big swig of whiskey and spit it out the window on the school grounds and drives away, and the film fades to black. So what did you think of the ending?
I guess we were expecting some sort of backlash or some sort of resolution, and I didn't know where exactly it was going at that point. But when Paul gave in and tried to, decided to defend Tully, I think, in my opinion, and now I'm realizing this as we talked about the movie, is that I think he very much thought Tully was somewhat like him. He did something very stupid when he was at Harvard, right, as a young man. And he got saved by one of his professors at Barton. And therefore, he was able to continue his career. And I feel like he wanted to do the same thing for Tully. And I guess he saw the potential in him. Even though he might be a troubled asshole child, he is still smart and he has somewhat of a vision. And I know it's unfair because not everyone gets that opportunity or the chance of saving. But in that condition and at that moment, he just decided to take that leap of faith for Tully.
I get what you're saying, and I think that was the intention of the writer of this film, that, Tully's mistake would be forgiven by Hunham's sacrifice, the same way Hunham's mistake was forgiven by a professor's sacrifice to give him a second chance or whatever, right? I get that. It's just hard for me to say that's where Tully's situation sits and forget about Curtis's situation. Curtis's ghost looms over this film. Curtis being the son of Mary Lamb, the boy who went to the same school, had the same opportunities as Tully, but paid the ultimate sacrifice for something that was out of his control because his parents didn't have the means. And then when I look at Tully's situation, his parents are going to send him to a military academy, which in the worst case scenario, he's going to have to go to the military school, join the army, and end up being a paper-pushing colonel in the desks while the poor kids die in the jungles of Cambodia, right? It's hard for me to, sympathize or say, yeah, Hunham did the right thing, when Hunham's whole situation started from a rich kid who broke the rules in the first place. Hunham could have been a Harvard professor. Hunham could have had so many more opportunities in his life had the rich not fucked him over. And so I believe maybe he's sort of perpetuating the same sort of bad behavior by allowing another rich kid to get away with doing something bad, rather than, standing on business. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand. And I think, like, like you said, the ghost of Curtis is throughout the movie. Constantly, we see his pictures shown. We see his old room, old clothes shown, basically. And, I think there's an understanding between Hunham and, especially between Hunham and Mary. And towards the end, also between Tully and Mary, is that they feel very sorry for her and about Curtis, but there isn't really anything they can do because they understand the injustice of it to a degree. Maybe not for Tully that much, but I think Hunham is able to understand that there is something systematically wrong. Mm-hmm. And he, even says to Mary that, Curtis was a good student and things like that.
The answer to injustice that we see in society is not to do injustice to ourselves or to institutions that we want to see be better, right? Like, for example, I see on the news a few days ago, a man who killed a homeless person on the subway got away scot-free on videotape and everything. A young white boy chokes a black man on the subway to death, and so he gets away with that murder scot-free. So the answer to that injustice isn't to say, well, you know what, at school I'm just gonna, let everybody fail the test, but I'll still pass them anyway if I'm the teacher. Or at the police station, if I'm the chief, I don't have my officers fill out reports when they fire their guns or something like that, right? Like, we don't see injustice happen and then say, let's do more injustice to ourselves or to our institutions. We should try to maintain justice wherever we are. And if Tully broke the rules, he should be punished. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, he did break the rules, but at the same time, he didn't necessarily do any harm to anyone. And I think, where Hunham's logic was coming from a more morally, more morality.
My argument against Tully is not that, he did something harmless. Technically, he didn't do something harmless because he gave something that turned out to be a weapon in his father's hand. His father almost killed somebody with it. But it's not about the harm. It's about the fact that he broke the rules and he is not going to be punished for it. Meanwhile, we, the rest of us, Hunham never broke the rules, but he got punished for it. Wait, Hunham did break the rules. He punched somebody in the face and he got punished for it. Curtis, didn't break any rules, and he got punished for it. Tully, Kuntz, the rest of these guys can bend the rules, break the rules, and not get punished for it. But Akdi, I want to ask you a question. What is the purpose of education?
It's to educate the next generation.
Okay.
And to be an example, to give them knowledge.
And what is the purpose of higher level institutions of learning, like universities or elite boarding schools?
To give theoretical knowledge and also somewhat of a practical experience about their field.
Okay, that might be what it is on paper, but I would argue that in practicality, the purpose of institutions like universities or colleges is not to teach people about, their field, just that. It's to reproduce the elite of any society. As you know, probably in your country, in Turkey, the people that get to go to college, probably their parents went to college or their parents had money, right?
Yeah.
Same thing in the U.S. They are reproducing the 1% or the upper middle class or the managerial class, right? And also the values that are in those institutions will be replicated into that next generation as well. So Kuntz's dad is probably maybe some slimy politician who bends and breaks the rules. Now his son is going to end up doing the same thing. Angus Tully's stepdad is probably some slimy CEO businessman who's putting, asbestos in buildings. And now Angus Tully says, well, you know what? I'll have some dumbass, middle class fall guy to take the blame for me whenever I fuck up or break the rules. You get what I'm saying? Like what's happening at these elite schools or elite institutions and what people are allowed to get away with is then reflected into our society as well. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think there is a cultural nuance in it because I agree that that's the purpose for private universities. But for example, in a lot of countries we also have free universities, which you don't have in America. So I feel like that sort of understanding is maybe heightened in your country. But at the same time, it is very classist, but at the same time, I don't know. It's not the same for everyone. Does that make sense? Because like I've had professors who come from like, you know, very, very low backgrounds, like low socioeconomical backgrounds, and they sort of built up their legacy, but then they gave it back to their communities, and they're not like living in the riches right now.
Right. I think, you know, you said that there are some countries that have free universities and America doesn't. That's true. But here in Hungary, university generally is very accessible and affordable, but not even half of Hungarians have a college university degree. Most of them just graduate high school. Just like in most other countries, the minority of people have college degrees. So it's still the same thing. Even if it's free or whatever, usually it can only be free if you have the right grades for it. And education a lot of the time is tied to income that a family has, right? So it's still a class thing. And if you have a professor who ended up, you know, coming from some poor background, who ends up working at an elite school or something like that, the thing is, when people enter elite spaces, they take on the values of the elite. And even if they are not a part of that class, they believe that they are a part of that class. Hunham, before we knew his whole story, we see him in his writing and his study and stuff like that, and he's acting just as much as the elite. You get what I'm saying? We think he is. So the teachers are all separated from the students, right? And they're sitting there in their high tables and chairs, and they act and feel like the elite.
Yeah, I understand that, and I agree to it also, but it's like, it's also, once again, something systematic, it's something societal. I feel like maybe from the times of like the Greeks and the Romans, this sort of like, you know, tie of education with the elite or eliticism is like, maybe it comes from that era, and it's sort of like stuck in our societies that we have this understanding of, oh, okay, if you're highly educated, then you're probably also like middle to higher class, you know? So I'm not going to deny that connection, but it's, once again, it's societal, it's systematic, especially in America, like I said.
But in Turkey, how many Turks have at least a bachelor's degree?
I mean, more than before, but probably still not enough. I don't know.
Would you say it's half of the country?
Maybe, yeah.
You would say so? Okay, in America, about 40% of Americans have a bachelor's degree at least. And from my understanding, in most other countries, there is not, I can't think of any country where more than half of the population has a bachelor's degree at least.
Yeah, I mean, if I say 50%, I think I would be pushing it. Maybe it might be the same like in the 40s in Turkey as well.
Right.
I don't think it's definitely more than 50.
And even then, just having a bachelor's degree is basically having a high school diploma today. So then how many would you say have master's degrees?
Very, very
Very
little.
few.
Yeah.
MPs?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Basically non-existent.
Exactly. Basically non-existent. So the point is, education, whether it's free or low cost, is still very hard to attain, or very few people attain it. And you know, when I watched that scene of Kuntz and his parents, I mean, not Kuntz, Tully's parents, you know, saying, you know, we want, you know, to know what happened. What did our son do? And instead you hide it, you know, it makes you feel like, when you're watching it, the movie wants you to feel like Hunham did the right thing. But I think, just keeping it very simple, I'm going to make this very simple. We should not be sympathizing with the elite or their children, period. There's no reason to sympathize with them for their elite problems, period. There's no reason to sympathize with a badass kid of the 1% because he decided to do something that was against mama's wishes. That's like my line in the sand. You know what I mean? I know you're going to try to say, no, he's just a kid, or he just wanted to be with his dad on Christmas, right? He might have wanted that, but you got to pay the cost to be the boss. You do the crime, you do the time. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean, Simon. But at the same time, I just want to consider everyone as, you know, as their own person, as their own human. And like I said, especially younger people, they are just like, I don't know, just like Curtis didn't choose his race or his class. Same for Tully, and he ended up fortunate to be born in a higher income family. But at the same time, like you can see that his parents are dicks basically, and they're assholes, and they don't really understand any sort of struggle. So yeah, like I don't want to put all the blame on the kid just because his parents are like that. And I feel like, especially as like someone like Hunham, if he also like left him alone, if he punished Tully for this as well, like it wouldn't be him, it would be his parents. But if he abandoned Tully as well, I feel like that would have an even worse effect on Tully in terms of like, nobody really cares about me, so I'm just gonna also be like my parents as well, because that's the only power I have, like Kuntz, so hopefully, these sorts of acts of kindness, I guess, inspires Tully, or whenever it happens in real life as well, to use their wealth, use their power for something good. I know it's not something
that's idealism. That's super idealism.
Yeah.
He's gonna be like, wow, somebody lied on behalf of me. I'm gonna do something good for the future people that I will lord over, as I'm a part of the 1% that controls the economy and our politics and society. Very unlikely. It's just very sad. I would say the ending. I know it's supposed to be hopeful, or a bit sort of like, this movie is supposed to be like The Grinch or something like that. Ebenezer Scrooge, right? He understands the true meaning of Christmas and family and sacrifice and some higher morals and ethics. But I just walk away from it feeling like kind of gross that we're, trying to make the objects of our empathy the people who have no empathy, the people who have no self-awareness, the people who have the most that our society has to offer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that, but I think maybe what this movie is trying to say, that majority of upper class people might be like that, but it's not all of them.
But Tully is no different. Like he is, to me, he didn't come across as self-aware.
He is a little bit different. Like when he like the way he talks to other people around him, when we saw him in conversation with Hunham and Mary, and also like with the Korean kid, he was supporting him. He peed himself, and he said like, I'll help you hide the sheets in the morning, it's okay, having friends is underrated. Like he tried to console him and things like that. So he is not like Kuntz, for example. So he is somewhat educationable in terms of being a good human being.
I got you. It just feels like feeling sad for Tully in this film is like feeling sad for like the United Healthcare CEO and his family. Like, oh, your husband denied people health insurance and like made hundreds of thousands of Americans like paralyzed or die, and we're supposed to feel sad because Luigi Mangione whipped out that pistol and put that iron on your husband. We're supposed to feel sad because you got capped by a Mario brother.
I don't think you're supposed to feel overly sad for Tully, or I don't think you're supposed to be deeply moved by Hunham's gesture. I just think it's more about their relationship and their connection than the actual situation that happened.
It is, because at the end of the day, they are humans, right? But they're humans divided by class and privilege and power. The dynamic in those classrooms is totally unequal, because just those kids being alive, they have more value in the capitalist system than Hunham does as their teacher. When he's standing in front of all of those kids, he's not standing in front of inferiors. He's standing before superiors in the capitalist world. Yeah. The kids don't have to study for anything. They don't have to do shit, and they'll have more value than his life ever will, no matter how smart he is. And so to see somebody, who dedicated his life to knowledge and teaching and upholding traditions and values end up just capitulating to for somebody who has no morals, no values, just for the sake of holding up morals and values, it's kind of, it makes me realize how we could end up having Trump as president again.
Okay. You think what you think, and I'll think what I'll think. And it's not that I'm necessarily disagreeing with you, but I like this movie, and I'm not saying like, oh, the message is great in this movie, it doesn't have any flaws or whatever, but overall, I don't, like, would I do what Hunham did? No. I wouldn't have. And I don't know if you would. I feel like the answer is no.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I have the right way to put it because maybe I feel like you're not catching what I'm putting down, or maybe it's too complex. I'll just say it like this. He did the right thing, but he was wrong to do it. Mm-hmm. That's the best way I could put it. He did the right thing, but he was wrong to do it because Tully, as a rich, privileged white kid, should have to suffer the consequences for his actions.
Yes, I understand, Simon.
Okay. I just thought I was getting too spaced out, too ethereal, too metaphorical.
Yeah, I know that you think Hunham is a good guy, essentially, about what he did. But in order to balance the equality between people, Tully should have suffered his consequences. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Jesus died for our sins already. Hunham didn't have to.
I actually felt bad that he got kicked out as a teacher.
Yeah.
But a little bit good because maybe he will go to Carthage.
Yeah. Part 2, Hunham in Tunisia.
Yeah.
Hunham. That's funny. Hunham in Hammamet.
No, Hunham teaching Tunisian kids.
Hunham teaching Tunisian kids?
Yeah.
Oh, God, he would suffer. He would suffer.
Because I think you taught rich Tunisian kids.
Oh, God, yes. These kids are a walk in the park compared to rich Tunisian kids. Teacher, why are you ugly?
Wow.
Anyway. So, overall, I like this film, though I have criticisms of it. Listen, it's a good movie. Giamatti carried this thing like Atlas. I give it an 8 out of 10. Give it an 8 out of 10. It's not laugh out loud funny. It's a well-shot film that makes you feel like you're in that time, 1970. And, you don't have to really think that hard if you don't want to. But if you think hard about it, you can have a good discussion about it. So, 8. Give it a solid 8, mostly for Giamatti.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that score. I'm going to also give it an 8. Solid acting by, all parts, I would say, especially Paul Giamatti and Da'Vine Joy Randolph. And yeah, I really like the cinematography. There was attention to detail when it came to like the setting, the era, the music. And, I pay attention to that. The dialogue was good. It was rich, and it, like you said, there isn't like a laugh out moment, but there's like moments that put a smile on your face, or lines that Paul Giamatti says, the insults he has, like he says like hormonal vigilance to the kids and stuff like that. So yeah, there are those parts where you go like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my score overall, 8.
All right. So this has been episode 96 or 97. I forgot already. We've been talking for a while and my brain is in all sorts of directions. But I enjoyed this conversation. And so this is the Holdovers. If you have any other films you want us to review, put it in the comments, put it in the chat. And be easy out there. We might try to knock out 1 or 2 more before the end of the year. We didn't reach 100, but we did quite a lot of movies this year. Close to 100, in the high 90s, which is still a lot. For this burgeoning podcast. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's been tuning in. The Love Jones one got 200 views. I'm glad to see that. We want to start getting more regular higher number views, and so help us out on the way by giving us suggestions, commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing, and all that good stuff. And that's it. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, peace.